the sports betting network.
This is the VSiN Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Good morning, happy Wednesday, and welcome into the VSiN Morning Line. Thank you for getting your day started with us. I'm Grace Armington with Michael Lombardi and Harrison Sanford, getting you up to date on all the headlines of the day. Here's what's coming up on the show. We got a trio of guests for you today. Will Hill joining us at 7:45 Eastern with his best bets for the week. Tone Diggs of the McAfee Show joining Michael Lombardi at 8:30 Eastern with his preview for the upcoming weekend of football. And our own Adam Burke joining us at 9:30 Eastern with an MLB playoff update and his best bets for college and NFL football. Coming up in this hour, we are reacting to the Davante Adams trade news and all of the trade news that followed that. We're taking a look at Michael's latest article in his writing spotlight, Can the Commanders Win the NFC East? And then wrapping the block or the segment with Will Hill's best bet. So let's get into the news of the day, guys. The Jets winning the Davante Adams sweepstakes. He goes to New York for a conditional third-round pick. That third-rounder can become a second-round pick if Adams becomes a first or second-team All-Pro this season, or if he's on the active roster should the Jets make the AFC Championship game or the Super Bowl. The Jets will take on the prorated portion of his contract, which comes out to $11.6 million. Subsequently, the Jets and Adams have agreed to a contract restructure for 2024, lessening that salary cap hit. Michael, now that we have all the details of the trade, your reaction?
Well, we knew this was going to happen. Let's go back to Lake Tahoe earlier in the summer, in July, when Aaron Rodgers said that, he was expecting Davante Adams to come. In some way, he said it, and it came to fruition. So I think, to me, this was inevitable. There was really, who were they competing against? I don't know, but clearly the Jets are all in. They want to win this thing, and they feel like one more receiver. Mike Williams is now available on the market. That experiment didn't work out. Mike Williams isn't healthy. You can see he's not the same player he once was at the Chargers. So they're going to replace Mike Williams with Davante, and Davante will be better in this system because Garrett Wilson's going to get all the double teams. Davante won't. So, look, they're going to have to do a better job of protecting Aaron Rodgers. There's no question about that. Their defense is going to have to be able to stop people and win these close games. There's no question about that. But to me, what the Jets needed was better offensive line play than another receiver. But naturally, they just wanted to get reunited with Aaron Rodgers, and we'll see how it goes. This is a receiver that averages just slightly over 11 yards a catch for the Raiders. Will that improve? Probably. How much? I don't think much.
I think if you look at the New York Jets schedule, there is a reason for optimism going forward. This weekend, they take on the Pittsburgh Steelers, who might be making a switch at the quarterback position. Then the Patriots, Texans, Arizona Cardinals, and Indianapolis Colts, all before they hit the bye week, Michael. If there was ever a time to make a trade for Davante Adams, it would seem like it is now. My question to you, looking at that 5-game stretch, where do you expect the Jets to be once they go into that bye week?
Well, look, they lost to the Denver Broncos at home. So I don't know if you can just play that scoreboard game with them. Who are they better than? I know we can make the case that, well, they should have beaten this team, they should have beaten that team. Until they win close games, we really don't know. Pittsburgh will be a tough game. They're a tough game everywhere. It's not going to be easy. Can they beat Pittsburgh? Absolutely. They've already beaten New England and dominated that. Houston, they get them at their next home game. That's when Davante Adams will make his first New York Jet appearance in the Meadowlands. So that game, and then they've got Arizona and Indianapolis, 2 games they should win just based on their talent level compared to the team before they get to the bye. I don't think they have a hard schedule. When you look at it, they come back, they play Seattle, Miami, Jacksonville, the Rams, then Buffalo, Miami to close the season. This schedule sets up really well for them to win the East if they can get it on track. But to me, I'm not sure they couldn't do this without Davante Adams. I don't think this is the one move that gets them over the hump because left tackle's been a concern all year. Morgan Moses at right tackle's been a concern. And Rodgers' health has got to be able to stay not a concern because he's taken a lot of hits over the last couple weeks.
Adams and Rodgers trying to recreate one of the most dangerous duos in recent NFL history. They already reunited on the TV screen on the Pat McAfee show yesterday. Let's take a listen to the wide receiver on his new team.
Well, first off, thank you for asking about the injury, and I'm feeling great, man. Feeling great. Getting, I was working with the staff over in Vegas the whole time, and they got me back right. So, fortunately, I'll be able to roll. And I'm sure there's a few new, little nuances, but for the most part, a lot of the same verbiage. Still the same OG right here, so should be able to pick up where we left off. That's the idea.
Yeah, I have no doubt he's going to pick up and come right into the game and play. It's a West Coast offense. It's exactly the same offense they ran in Green Bay together. That's not going to be the issue. The issue is going to be is he's going to face, the second corner. I mean, Garrett Wilson's still going to get doubled. And I think people are going to say to Davante Adams, to remember when. I mean, he was at one time an elite player, but lately, if you watch the Raider tape, he's not the same player that he was 2 years ago. It's the hamstring was never a question was going to get healthy once the trade happened. We know that. And I think ultimately the Raiders got really fortunate to come out of this with a third-round pick, and they got the salary off their books, which is important too. That goes into it. And now they can move on with their season, and Davante moves on with his. And I think this is one of those trades that, we were going to make a big deal out of. I don't know how much of an impact it's going to make. I'm sure we're going to go crazy the first time he catches one pass and everybody will go nuts. But at the end of the day, if the Jets don't pass protect better, it's not really going to matter.
I think that was a question that a lot of fantasy football players had, Michael, and a lot of people who like to invest in the prop market, looking at their schedule and looking at how this wide receiver room is now set up, with guys like Joey Porter Jr., the defensive back for the Pittsburgh Steelers, coming up, Christian Gonzalez coming up for the New England Patriots. Who's going to be the one who draws the number one defensive back coverage? Who's going to be the one who could potentially get double teamed, if there are double teams? I'm wondering, Michael, now with it all set up in that wide receiver room, who's going to be the more productive wide receiver, Wilson or Davante Adams?
Well, I mean, look, Wilson's not been productive. Let's be clear. He's had catches, right? He's got 41 catches. He averages 9.7 per catch. Is that productive? I mean, is that productive, right? I mean, if you're a big-time receiver, you're not averaging under 10 yards a catch. And so you're hoping, what the Jets are hoping with this move is the fact that, this will take some of the pressure off of Wilson in terms of double teams, because Mike Williams, he only was targeted 17 times. He had 10 catches. Now he averaged 14 yards a catch. But Lassard's the other player. Lassard's the one that has really been the number 2 receiver on the team, and I think his catches are going to go way down. They're going to get rid of Mike Williams because they want to get rid of the salary and all that. But Lassard's the one who's going to go down. He had 40 targets. Those 40 targets will now be Davante Adams. And I think, to me, that's going to be, is Davante Adams better than Alan Lassard? We're going to about find out. Now, every fan will say that's not even close. But if you watch the tape and you really understand the game, I think it's a little closer than people think.
You pointed out Garrett Wilson's lack of yards despite all of the targets that he gets. I think he's actually leading the NFL in targets. It was highlighted in the broadcast in previous Jets games that Aaron Rodgers, he has like the lowest time to throw in the NFL, or one of the lowest times to throw. I think 2.2, 2.5 seconds. Do you think that's just by design because the offensive line isn't a top-tier offensive line, or is that just where the offense wants to be, a quick throw type of offense to make sure Aaron Rodgers doesn't get hit?
Well, no. I mean, that's just the way their line is. I mean, they struggle to protect. They have problems all over. The tackle position, they're not secure. They haven't been since Joe Douglas has been the general manager. They haven't been secure at the tackle position. They tried to draft Becton. He didn't work out. They took Becton over Wirfs, right? I mean, they took some players. They could have a better left offensive line, but that's where the problem with the Jets is. It starts up front. And look, they still have to run the football. I mean, Breece Hall has to be the guy. Now, he's got 83 attempts in 6 games? He's going to have to get that moving and get it up. He only averaged, last week was his best game. He's averaged 3.7. They're going to have to run the football. They're going to have to do things because Rodgers can't throw it 50 times, and Rodgers can't stand back there and take all the hits that he took, especially the way he got beat up on Monday night against a Buffalo front that was missing 2 of their best pass rushers.
Plenty of things to fix for that Jets offense, but Adams has been Rodgers' favorite target over the past decade, throwing to him 200 more times than any other receiver. Let's go back to the Jets quarterback for a minute on the McAfee show and hear his reaction to this trade.
He uses a lot of energy into the team right away. He's a proven star player. He's He's an asset. He's incredible locker room presence. It's definitely adding a lot to our team. But I think energetically, with the change that we had, that was kind of can be disjointing for energetics in the team, for guys wondering what does this mean. Then the way Brick handled everything, was just class and good leadership. And now this move lets everybody know, hey, it's on us now, because we're going all in, and it's our time to go out there and win games, get on a run, which we all feel deep down is going to happen.
I don't know what success looks like for the Jets. To me, when they made this move, it's either Super Bowl or bust, because next year, the cap number for all these players go way up. They're not going to be able to improve their team. It's going to be very challenging. So Woody Johnson is playing a game where it's all in. And I don't know, are they good enough? Now, look, the one thing I will say in defense of the Jets here is the AFC East isn't elite, right? Buffalo's a team that you could beat. You played them evenly. I don't think Davante Adams moves the needle. I don't think he moved the needle in the Pittsburgh game now that he came in there. But they have an opportunity because of the East not being dominant. But to me, when you stub your toe against the Denver Broncos at home, there's no game on the schedule that you can take for granted. And if they don't improve the offensive line, Denver's front beat them up. There's no question about that. Anytime they play a good front, they're going to have trouble, because this line is going to struggle. It's not horrible, but it certainly has its issues. And Tyron Smith, is going to be an issue.
Several Jets team members saying they're going all in after this trade. Safe to assume their goals are still Super Bowl or bust, but the team they're chasing in the division, the Bills, also getting better on offense with a trade of their own. We're going to get into that and all the NFL news that went down yesterday coming up on the other side. This is the VSiN Morning Line.
Time. There's nothing more valuable. It's what drives everyone to make the most of every moment. We celebrate living large in the now. In a city where time disappears, we create experiences that electrify the soul and memories that will last forever. We go big, we go all night, and here, everyone is invited. So get loose and get loud.
This is Circa. You'll have the time of your life.
Coming up Wednesday on Follow the Money, playoff baseball continues, college football games to cover, and Rich Gannon, Sal Powell, and Matt Humans on the NFL and all the trades. Follow the Money weekdays, 4 to 7 Eastern on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Want to see who at VSiN is on a hot streak? Go to VSiN.com/picks to see all the selections and weekly leaderboard of VSiN hosts, writers, and guests. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber and get every pick sent to your inbox daily. Just head to VSiN.com/pro.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it, it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole nine, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's late night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line, where we are recapping all the NFL news. But first, an update on these MLB playoffs. The ALCS now goes to Cleveland with the Yankees up 2-0 in the series. Both aces had off nights. Tanner Bybee just got 4 outs in the shortest start of his professional career. Garrett Cole was a bit erratic and was chased after 4 walks in 4 1/3 innings. In the bottom of the first, Gleyber Torres was the first to get on the board. He scores on an error. The Cleveland shortstop drops a routine pop-up from Aaron Judge. In the bottom of the second, Cleveland intentionally walks Juan Soto to face Aaron Judge, much to the dismay of the home crowd, maybe sending a little message to Judge there, saying he's got to pick it up in this postseason. But he goes on to hit a sac fly. They end the inning up 3-0. Bottom of the 7th, Judge sending a message of his own with a 414-foot home run to center field. That snaps a 9-game drought without a home run in this postseason. It had been the longest home run drought in his playoff career. Funny little moment in that play. Gleyber had tagged back to first. He didn't think the ball was getting out of the park, and Judge almost ended up catching him on his home run trot. But the Yankees go on to win it 6-3. Harrison, I know you were watching your Yankees last night. Did you have any thoughts on the game?
Yeah, that was a good win for the Yankees, even though it came it was a little bit nerve-wracking watching them get the job done. Shout out to the Guardians yet again for giving up another run. That missed infield fly definitely helped the cause for the Yankees. I think when it comes to Aaron Judge, it was nice for him to get the home run, but I do think we'd be remiss to say that he has made contact on the ball. He was able to get some sacrifice flies into the outfield and get some RBIs that way as well. So he's making some progress there. I think the shocking thing to me was the fact that the Cleveland Guardians couldn't get a good start out of Bybee. Looking at how he had performed so far this year, I thought he would have a good chance to give them some length. He did not. Fortunately for the Guardians, they were able to somewhat hold on to the lead with some of those bullpen arms coming out there. Obviously, the 2-run home run did hurt their case in the end, but having those arms available now coming off a day's rest for game number 3 is going to be a cause for concern. We've already seen Emmanuel Clase have a 6-out performance so far this postseason, so he's going to be super fresh and available with what might seem as a win-all-be-all game number 3. Obviously, the series you need to win 4, but going down 3-0 is not ideal, that's for sure. But all in all, good win for the Yankees. They got just enough. Luke Weaver came in, closed the door, even though he gave up that home run. Good, solid win. I will say this, though, Grace. Good on Aaron Boone for bringing back Anthony Rizzo to that lineup. He had been hurt for majority of the year. He was not on the roster for the series against the Royals. He's been a valuable left-handed bat. You always need some left-handed bats when you're playing at Yankee Stadium. So good on him, even though he did have that little mess up when he was running the bases later on in the game. And what I love about Yankee fans, Grace, and even the Yankee media, they are not afraid to call out the Yankees. They had 2 base running mishaps in that game. Not just Rizzo, but also Jazz Chisholm. John Sterling, the legendary Yankees play-by-play guy, he said on the radio broadcast, the Yankees, they're running the bases like they're drunk. And that's exactly what they were doing last night. Thankfully, they were able to get the win, but they don't let nothing slip around here.
Yeah, it was never really their strength, but an ugly game for both teams in this one. Your weaknesses are magnified in the postseason, but the Yankees pull out this one 6-3, taking a 2-0 lead to Cleveland now. Clark Schmidt will start game 3 for the Yankees. TBD for Cleveland, but right now the Yankees a -115 favorite. Cleveland at even odds on the money line. Let's get back into our NFL news here. And the Jets, not the only one making a trade for a wide receiver. The Bills, the team they're chasing, trading for Amari Cooper, giving Josh Allen a primary target in this offense that had been struggling so much in the passing game. Michael, what was your reaction when you saw this trade go down?
Well, this trade really was about giving up a 3rd-round pick for a guy who's on a minimum salary. Remember, the Browns redid Amari Cooper's contract this offseason. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, but they guaranteed all his money, so he's just got a minimum salary. The Browns have already paid it, and so they sent a 3rd-round pick there. I mean, it helps Buffalo. They need an outside receiver. The problem is Amari Cooper tends to drop the ball way too much. He doesn't really like playing in cold weather, which is hilarious. He's now played in Cleveland and Buffalo. He keeps moving further north into the cold. So for me, I think this is a move Buffalo had to make. I don't know if it sends out the white flags in Cleveland, but certainly they needed somebody. And obviously Cooper was not happy playing with Deshaun Watson. I don't care what anybody says. You could see his body language. That wasn't working. I'm not sure anybody's happy playing receiver. The one thing about the Browns, you always thought they had decent skill players with Cooper and then Njoku at tight end, Elijah Moore, and then Jerry Jeudy. But Jerry Judy's not a number one receiver. We've seen that in Denver before. This is, if it can hurt a Browns offense even more, this one can.
Schematically, I'm wondering how this changes the Buffalo Bills. We've seen that they've pretty much been middle of the pack in terms of explosive plays, Michael. A lot of their game-breaking plays rely on Josh Allen really rolling out to his right-hand side. What do you think Amari Cooper really does to the dynamics of this defense outside of just being another one of others, which has been their approach at the wide receiver position and pass catcher room for the Buffalo Bills?
Well, I think he gives them an ex-receiver, right? I mean, Shakir is still their slot guy. I think Matt Collins has showed that he can make some plays on the outside, and it takes some of the pressure off Keon Coleman to be the guy, right? I mean, he's a rookie. He's going to gradually learn how to play, but now it gives them, look, they want to be a 12 personnel. They've changed who they are now. They're a 12 personnel team with Kincaid and Knox in there, and they can run the football effectively, whether it's with Ray Davis, as they did last week, or with James Cook. So to me, Cooper's going to be on the outside. It'll give a big play guy out there that the defense has to respect. You know, they're not as worried about him. Will he catch the football effectively? I think that's a concern. But he is an upgrade for them, and I thought it was a good move for Buffalo to do this. It's a high price to pay, but if you're Buffalo, you're giving up a third-round pick, which is going to be somewhere in the 90s because you expect to go to the playoffs and expect to go deep into the playoffs.
Who's more productive going forward, Amari Cooper or Davante Adams?
Well, I think it should be Amari Cooper because he's going to come into an offense that really needs him, right? I mean, Garrett Wilson's still going to be the guy with 67 targets and 40 catches. Now, we know he's going to get the football. You can expect the first play against Pittsburgh, the ball's going to go to Davante Adams on a stop fade or some play like that. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. They want to make sure they get him involved. But I think the move that over the long haul that helps, assuming that Cooper can catch the football, right, and he can play in cold weather, which are two assumptions that are not easy to make with Cooper, I think he gives them something they really needed badly. The Jets, to me, need a left tackle. They need a right tackle more than they need another receiver.
The Bills' wide receiver room currently ranks 25th in the league in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and first down. So Amari Cooper hopefully bringing them a boost. Let's get to another team here making a change. The Steelers planning to give Russell Wilson first team reps over Justin Fields this week ahead of their matchup with the Jets. Let's take a listen to head coach Mike Tomlin on the news.
Justin has been really good, and we've been really good at times, but not to be confused with great. Man, this is a competitive league, man. We're trying to position ourselves to be that team. And we got a player with talent who hadn't had an opportunity to play, so we're going to potentially explore those things. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what Justin has done or has not done.
Yeah, I think this is, look, they're 30th in passing attempts, right? They're 28th in yards. They're 27th in touchdown passes by their quarterback. Like, their passing game isn't there. Now, all the Justin Fields defenders out there are saying he's playing really well. They're not watching the tape from a really a football perspective. They're grading plays, but they can't get an offense going, and I think that's the biggest issue. Now, is Russell better than him? I'm not sure I'm willing to say that, but to me, I think what Mike said there is true. They've got a guy that's played at a high level at one time. Can they get him to come back and do that? Can they take some of the pressure off their offensive line where everybody knows they're trying to run the ball? They're second in the league in rushing attempts, so everybody knows they want to run the football. The problem is they can't really run it effectively. They're 24th in yards per attempt. They run it a lot, but they don't run it for big plays. They need to find a passing game. They just need to. They have to be able to do it. They're 26th in the National Football League in yards gained. They're 20th in points scored. They finally scored over 30 points last week, and that really helped them win the game. but typically they need 2 games to score 30 points. So I think this is a move. They have the New York special here at home. They host the Jets this weekend. They host the Giants before the bye. I think they're going to work Russell in, and I think after the bye week, when they open up against the Commanders on the road, I would think Russell will be the starting quarterback if he plays well.
Yeah, I think there has to be something to be said here for you can't lose your job to injury. This is not a job that Russell Wilson necessarily had starts to begin the season. I guess he was named the starting quarterback, but he never played a regular season game. I know Mike Tomlin can pull it off, Grace, because he really is a leader of that locker room. And if they're going to make a change, I guess the team will be behind it. But I feel like in most locker rooms, something has to be said for not losing your job to injury, which I guess is why Russell Wilson will be able to get a start.
This is true, and it'll be interesting because Tomlin hasn't ruled out the possibility of them both getting time against the Jets. He said that's a scenario that actually could have happened last week, but we'll be following that situation throughout the week. Coming up next, we're taking a look at the NFC East, which has suddenly become a bit more competitive.
And they're off.
Sports betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup. Then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to VSiN.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is VSiN, the sports betting network.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line, where we are breaking down Michael Lombardi's latest article for VSiN.com. Remember, if you are a VSiN Pro subscriber, you can find all his articles and all of the articles from our talent over at VSiN.com with your Pro subscription. If you use the code VML, you'll get the first year price for just $199. But let's get into this article about the NFC East, Michael. These odds have been jumbled around all spring, offseason, and now current season. The Eagles closed preseason as the favorite to win the division. But as you say in your article, something isn't right with the Birds. They cannot score in the first quarter. There is a reason why they're 4-10 in the last 14 games, no matter how cocky their head coach acts on the sidelines. So what is that reason?
Well, I can't really, to me, they're not as good defensively as they've been in the past. The defensive front can't dominate. They signed Bryce Huff to a huge deal. He was a role player at the Jets, really good in his role, could really rush the passer, come off the edge. But he has half a sack for the Eagles. And one of the things the Eagles wanted to do this offseason, one of their offseason plans was to improve their pass rush. That hasn't happened. Improve their linebacking play. That hasn't happened. Improve their secondary play. I'm not sure that's happened, but because they can't really rush, they can't really dominate the game, they can't really utilize we don't know if their corners can hold up. Everything about the Eagles is built on their front. The other factor is they won in 2 years ago because they scored 204 points in the second quarter alone. They were ahead in games so much in that year that it was, even when they played a close game, it was surprising. And I think, to me, now they can't even score in the first quarter. And I know Nick Sirianni said, don't worry about it, everything's good. Well, after 6 games, if you haven't scored on your opening drive or start from playing from in front, that's a problem. That is a problem. So I think, to me, there's a disconnect between the head coach and the quarterback. That's been well documented. I think you see it in their body language. I know everybody says the right thing. But more importantly, I think what the basis of my article was, the Eagles really are going to struggle against a good passing team. And Washington's a good passing team. The Detroit Lions are a good passing team. Green Bay's a good passing team. Minnesota's a good passing team. The 49ers are a good passing team. And so, to me, they don't have a Super Bowl feel to them because their defense, what they plan to have this offseason, hasn't manifested itself during the season.
In certain cities, it's okay to just walk away every Sunday with a win, but not necessarily for the Philadelphia Eagles. And you saw that this past weekend when they beat the Cleveland Browns. It was not an impressive performance, albeit they got the win, but the fans definitely weren't happy. We saw Nick Sirianni get into it with some of the fan base during that game in itself. We've even seen some of their players get into it with fans like C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I'm starting to get concerned, Michael, that the attention that they get from fans, the inclination to clap back at their own fan base is something that's actually going to work against them, and it isn't necessarily going to help them be a better team going forward.
Well, I mean, look, the one thing I know about Philadelphia, I grew up here. I would consider myself a Philadelphia fan. I don't root for the Eagles. I certainly don't root for the Phillies. I mean, I root for the 76ers painfully, but I do. I don't think you could turn on the fans. I don't think you could, because there's no end game there. I mean, what he did might have been one of the dumbest things you could do. It's almost like you don't know you live in Philly. And at some point, to me, Nick Sirianni has to grow up. At some point, if you're Jeff Lurie, you're sitting there watching this guy act so immature, you're like, that's what I want from my head coach? That's really what I want? He represents me. He represents my franchise. I want him in a confrontation with the fans. Look, one thing about Philly, they built a statue for Doug Peterson in front of the stadium. You know, Doug Peterson's probably going to lose his job at the end of the year in Jacksonville. You know, he wasn't a great coach, but he was endearing to the fans. You know, he got fired 2 years after winning a Super Bowl. That's all you need to know. Most Super Bowl winning coaches have a little bit longevity to them. But when you take on the fans like Sirianni did, and then you double down and bring your kids to the press conference, which is basically you're saying to the media, don't ask me any hard questions. That's what he's saying. look, I love kids. I love dogs in commercials. I love kids in commercials. I love it. I got 5 great-grandchildren. I love them all. But don't bring them to a press conference. Not when you know it's going to be hostile. It's just there's no awareness to the guy.
Yeah, that definitely felt like a cop-out. Grace and I were talking about that, I believe, on Monday. So now with Sirianni clapping back at the fans, Michael, it seems to me the only way he survives this season is a Super Bowl run. If he continues with this path of being kind of confrontational with the fan base, the only way that he could justify it, the only way the fans let him slide, is bringing back a Lombardi trophy.
Yeah, well, I think to me that's the problem, right? I think when you look at the team, that's what was the basis of my article. Like, I don't think it spells well for Nick if he doesn't, even if he wins, if he gets to the playoffs. I think there's this confrontation. There's always going to be one team is going to be ultimately really disappointed in their not disappointed in their season. That's the Super Bowl winner, and obviously the team that goes to the Super Bowl won't be overly disappointed. But everybody else is fair game. I mean, Marty Schottenheimer lost his job with the San Diego Chargers. He's one of 9 coaches who've won 200 games in his career. When he lost a playoff game in a conference, he lost his job. I mean, so there's levels of expectations that come attached to these jobs. And I think, to me, when Sirianni acts like as immature as he does, even the diehard Eagle fans don't want to defend him. I mean, that's just fact.
Okay, speaking of clapping back at people, Jerry Jones is doing the same thing, seemingly feeling the heat after the Cowboys' 3-3 start to the season. All 3 of those losses coming at home. He now turned on the interviewers in his weekly radio spot. Let's take a listen to the Cowboys owner.
This is not your job. Your job isn't to let me go over all the reasons that I did something and I'm sorry that I did it. That's not your job.
Well, my job is to ask why.
A job, or I'll get somebody else to ask these questions, man.
Jerry, we're trying to figure out why the team is.
I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. You're not going to figure out what the team is doing right or wrong. If you are, or any 5 or 10 like you, you need to come to this meeting I'm going to today. There are 32 teams here. You're geniuses.
Well, look, I think when Jerry Jones is doing interviews after the game, when Jerry Jones has his own radio show, you're going to get asked these questions. I mean, I don't know how he can avoid it. Like, if you want to be an owner of the team, you really don't have to do that. But Jerry has been doing that since he's been there. He loves it. And now he's really upset with his team, and I think he's taking it out on the radio guys because they're drawing the attention to him, because basically what people are saying is what I've said last offseason. This team isn't that talented. And so when you start talking about a lack of talent, not a lack of coaching, who do you look to? You look to the GM. Well, who's the GM? The guy's doing the radio shows and the TV shows. So he has no one to blame for this but himself. Look, I don't know if he owns the station, but certainly has influence on the station. But to me, there's a little bit of a switch there that went off that's got to be concerning if you're a Cowboy fan, because Jerry typically is so good at not letting people get under his skin. This season is under his skin without a doubt.
I'm done with Jerry Jones, and I'm done with the Cowboys. He had a follow-up interview with The Athletic where he spoke to Diana Rossini about that confrontation he had with the radio host, and this is what he said. He said the wrong ones were doing the questioning. Now, if those had been real fans sitting there, or if there had been people that knew what they were talking about, football people, I might have had a different answer. And to me, as somebody who's been a beat reporter, I think, Grace, this could resonate with you too, the people asking you the questions are supposed to represent the fans. That is what they are there for. Not every fan has an opportunity to speak to Jerry Jones. The media is a liaison for the fans so that they can hear from the owner, so they can hear from the head coach. And so for Jerry Jones to threaten their jobs on live air when they're doing their job, the job that the fans want them to do, is totally out of pocket for Jerry Jones. And I would say to Jerry Jones, you don't need to be a football person to know the Dallas Cowboys can't run the ball. You don't need to be a football person to understand the Dallas Cowboys can't stop any rushing attack. You don't need to be a football person to understand that they have no other offense than Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. You don't need to be a genius. So for Jerry Jones to get mad at these people for asking the questions that the fans want them to ask is totally out of pocket. To threaten their job on public radio, totally out of pocket. Grace, I'm done with Jerry Jones. Out of line. There is no question about it. He's feeling the heat from being a bad team, and this is how he's responding. If he took accountability, maybe you could look at him differently. But for him to try and put off the blame or escape the blame or put the spotlight on somebody else other than himself, I don't like it. I don't like it one bit.
It just screams insecurity. And he's in his 80s now. He's done this his whole life. You'd think he'd know how to handle the pressure by this point. By the way, if he invited me to one of those meetings, if I were the one doing the interview, I'd be like, heck yeah, bring me along. I'll take the invite. I don't care if he's kidding. I'd love to get him to one of those. By the way, as we wrap this conversation, Commanders, a plus 120 favorite to win the NFC East. Eagles plus 130. Cowboys plus 450. All right, coming up next, time to lock in some best bets. Will Hill joins the show with his plays for college and NFL.
In the heart of downtown Las Vegas, a sports oasis awaits. Stadium Swim, the ultimate outdoor amphitheater, built for the ultimate sports fan, with a colossal screen that brings the game closer than ever. Reserve a daybed, private cabana, or lounge in the center of it all. 6 pools to dive into as the game heats up. And the best part, there's never an off-season. Open 365 days a year. Stadium Swim, it's always spectator season.
Wake up with Michael Lombardi, Grace Remington, and Harrison Samford on the VSiN Morning Line.
I will say this. I told Brian Daboll the minute he went there, you got to get a quarterback. I don't know one thing that Jacksonville does well, and so I'm not going to make a bet with a team that doesn't do anything well.
They'll cover all the top scores and stories from the night before. Keep you up to date on the news impacting betting lines. Plus, give you their picks for the upcoming action. The VSiN Morning Line, weekdays at 7 a.m. Eastern, right here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for tapping into the VSiN Morning Line. I'm Harrison Sanford, joined by Michael Lombardi and Grace Remington on this Wednesday morning as we look ahead to another week of football where some rosters are going to look a little bit differently than they did to start the season, particularly the New York Jets, because they traded for Davante Adams. To discuss that and to give his best bets and much more, joining us now on the Progressive Guest Line is VSiN contributor Will Hill, who's also the host of the Shoulda Bet More podcast, as well as the Bear Bets podcast on Fox Sports. Well, we'll get to your best bets in just a moment, but let's talk about it. Davante Adams, now a New York Jet. They have an easy schedule coming up, going through the bye week, relatively easy at least. What is your opinion on what this does for this New York Jets team?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed inevitable. And anytime you add a player that's, I don't know, borderline Hall of Famer-ish player like Adams, it helps. But the Jets obviously have bigger problems. I mean, the offensive line, Tyron Smith hasn't been good. They haven't looked the same defensively. They just look a step slow, especially at linebacker. So I would imagine Douglas is not done, whether you can figure out Hassan Reddick, whether you can figure out another move, because, I mean, this is almost like a quartered animal here where Douglas doesn't have anything to lose. If this continues down this path and they go 7-10, 8-9, miss the playoffs, there's going to be a new GM. There's going to be a new everything, I would think. So if you're Douglas, you get Reddick done. You try to get Reddick done. You try to get another deal done. I think they kind of just go all in, despite the fact they're 2-4. If you're going to talk yourself into a run for the Jets, you say, hey, our schedule's not that bad coming up. Like you said, Steelers may be a winnable game, and we'll see who plays quarterback for Pittsburgh. I can't imagine it'd be Wilson, but it seems like that's a possibility. Some Patriots games, some Dolphins games, and then the Bills still have the Chiefs, the Lions, the 49ers. So maybe you talk yourself and we can get back into it. But Adams helps, but he's not gonna cure everything. Lombardi, it reminds me of the Sopranos line where Tony's talking to Dr. Melfi about the Jeannie Cusimano dream. We say we have much bigger problems than Jeannie Cusimano.
There's no question they do, but that to me is the same issue, right? They focused on it. Their off-season planning. I mean, they knew that Nathaniel Hackett wasn't what they wanted at offense coordinator. They didn't make the move in the offseason. Now they've got Todd Dowling. To me, now they got to get the ball to Davante Adams. Garrett Wilson averages under 10 yards a catch. I mean, I don't understand why this move, giving up a third-round pick, was the most significant move that they could make. But obviously it makes the media happy and it made Woody Johnson happy. So, look, I love when people look at the schedule and say, well, they should win these games. Well, they should have beat Denver. Right?
Yep.
I mean, they should have beat Minnesota over there, right? They should have won. They could have beaten Buffalo. I mean, we know this. For all the games they should have won, they should have lost to the Titans, right? I mean, that game was right there. If it wasn't for the great Will Levis and his mayonnaise commercial, they lose that game. So,
should have stopped at Roy Rogers,
to me, that's right.
Should have stopped at Roy Rogers.
He should. That's the end of this story. So let's talk about some college football. Georgia, Texas. I mean, I know Georgia, Alabama getting 3 against them was when are you ever going to get 3 with Georgia? But seriously, 4? I never thought this would get over the 3.5-ish line. Are you surprised? And I know you're taking Georgia.
I am surprised. I do like Georgia, and we know Kirby Smart. Look, they've got some issues in terms of the program and the discipline, and boy, get these kids some Uber at some point. But he's a master motivator. I'm sure that he knows he's an underdog. I'm sure he's going to feed that to his kids. Hey, you lost the game. They think you're no good. You're getting points now. I'll take the points. I think this line in the look in the summer was closer like a pick 'em. I don't know what Texas has done to really be upgraded so significantly. All right, nice win in Ann Arbor against Michigan, but this is not the same Michigan team. And it just feels like one of those college basketball seasons where we think Georgia's number 1, they lose. We think Bama's number 1, they lose. We think Ohio State's 1, they lose. I don't know that there's that dominant team. To me, this is more of a toss-up game. I think, we'll see Texas be tested a little bit here where they haven't been tested in the past. Georgia at least has that game in Tuscaloosa against Bama where they've at least been more battle-tested than anything Texas has faced here. I mean, Texas has not, faced the greatest competition. So to me, toss-up game, field goal game, I'll happily take the 4 here with Georgia.
Nebraska and Indiana both coming off a bye week. Nebraska catching 6.5 here. And Will, I'm curious your thoughts on Dylan Raiola, because while he has all the talent in the world, he's doing this whole casual, just flat-footed, walking around. I feel like it's this new high schooler trend where they're trying to be too cool in the pocket, and it's costing him. But your thoughts on him in this game?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly see the flashes. You also certainly see why he's a true freshman and he's a young kid because he's not polished. He's raw at times. He's certainly talented. But I like Nebraska. Now, give Indiana all the credit in the world. I actually had my buddy Kev O'Neill on my podcast this summer. He gave out Indiana 500-1 to make the playoffs. And if you look at the schedule, other than Ohio State, they're going to be favored in all these games. Cignetti, I think, is got to be the front runner here for Coach of the Year. He's been incredible. But they haven't really faced a team, I mean, that's even close to Nebraska. I mean, they played FIU, they played Western Illinois, they played Charlotte, they played UCLA. This is a different test. This is a Nebraska team. They're good up front defensively. They're big up front. They can probably put you in some third and long. I mean, look what they did to Colorado, and that's actually aged pretty nicely. They've got a quarterback. They've got a defensive line. To me, this is another situation where, field goal type of game. I think this is going to be a close game. This is by far Indiana's biggest test. It's amazing that we're sitting here middle of the season talking about Indiana as a playoff contender, Big Ten title game contender. It's an incredible story and a great coaching job. I just think this is a lot of points. I'll take Nebraska plus the points.
Well, we've seen Cam Ward be lesser of a favorite to win the Heisman Trophy over the past couple of weeks as guys like Ashton Genty and Dylan Gabriel have really soared up after their most recent performances. But here's an opportunity for Cam Ward, not necessarily a marquee game, but definitely could put up some good numbers against Louisville. You're looking at this over for this weekend's matchup for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I think this there's a lot of components for the over here. I think first off, like Louisville, you can't run it on them. They got some monsters up front. They've got some pros, some NFL guys on their defensive line. But the problem for Louisville is you don't have to run it on them because they are not good playing in space. They're not good against the pass. And I just think this passing game for Miami with Ward, with the receivers Horton and Restrepo, they're gonna have some holes because this Louisville team, and they gave up 34 to SMU, they gave up 31 to Notre Dame. They're not good against the pass. They're not great tackling. They're just not good in space. Period. But Louisville is good offensively. I think Miami, you can move the ball on them. Louisville, look, this is a team they put up 400 yards on Notre Dame, a Notre Dame team that's really good on defense, a really good secondary. So to me, this is what Lombardi calls a CFL game. Not a lot of third downs. Both teams making big gains through the air. A lot of passing. I don't know that either team's going to even bother to run. So to me, this is a 34-31 type of game. It is a high total here at 61, but it's high for a reason, and I don't think it's quite high enough here.
Yeah. Let's shift to the NFL. The Browns just traded Amari Cooper away. This is one of the worst offenses in all of football. They can't convert a third down to save their lives. I think they've converted 14 third downs in 6 games. Believe that. I know that's an impossible stat to believe, but the Bengals come to town. The Bengals played better defense. I think having Mike Hilton back as the star really helped their inside corner position. So the Bengals, Browns, usually a close game, divisional game. Last week, all the favorites in these road favorites all won and beat the spread. I think it was 9-0 in the game when Buffalo closed that out. So you like the Bengals again to continue that trend?
Yeah, I do. And boy, that's a dangerous trend to start paying attention to. Like, oh man, all these road favorites are covered. The home dogs are due to lose or due to win. It's, the dogs were doing well early. The favorites made a comeback. Usually this stuff balances out over the long season. But I like Cincy here. Like you mentioned, they look better defensively. Now the stats are a little skewed because there was no neighbors. Giants missed a couple of field goals, but they did look better defensively. And what is there to like about Cleveland? I know this is a 4-point game on paper against Philly, but that's a 10-point swing right before half where Philly tries the long field goal. Not only do they not make it, it gets blocked and it gets returned for a touchdown. That's a 10-point swing. Plus, Philly ended the game, I think, on the 6-yard line of Cleveland. So that's easily could have been another 17 points. And if that game ends by Philly by 20, I don't know that this line is 6.5. I just think Cleveland, you never want to say anybody's unbettable because there's a price for everything. There's a number for everything. But this Cleveland team is such a disaster. You worry or you wonder, like, hey, without Cooper, have they kind of cashed in the chips here? Where's their mindset? They're running Watson out there every week, which you can't understand. Cincy winning this game by a touchdown, trying to get back into the mix here for the playoffs, I think is very reasonable. So I will lay it here with the Bengals.
Let's get your baseball play in here really quick. The only game of the night between the Dodgers and Mets. Pretty close if you're going by the odds here, but it's Buehler versus Severino. Who you got?
I got the Mets. I've fallen in love with this Mets team. Such a great story, so resilient. 11 games under 500 in June. This team has some magic. A million come from behind wins. And the pitching starts to favor them because Severino's been pretty good. Buehler for the Dodgers, you know this, Grace, you follow this stuff. He has been awful. He is not the same pitcher he was 4 or 5 years ago. A lot of arm injuries, doesn't have the same velocity. That building is going to be rocking tonight. We are 5 combined wins away from a Subway Series, and I've got a feeling we get there. I like the Mets tonight.
Well, thank you for that insight there, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, see you guys. Thanks for having me.
We'll be sure to break down that Mets and Dodgers game later on in the show. But coming up next, Tom Brady, a member of the Las Vegas Raiders front office. The impact of that, the impact of Jerry Jones' comments, and Nick Sirianni's comments to the Eagles fans. That and much, much more when we return right here on the VSiN Morning Line.
VSiN's got you covered for the start of the season with our football special. For $175, you'll get